are these people?
I want to get to my our next story for the evening. Which is pretty sad. Have you guys heard anything about this? I know I saw a few videos on Twitter go out about this.
I know Sabi reported on this yesterday, I believe. But actually, there's some information that I think may need to be clarified because I'm hearing
I have some
two different things. Like
I have some clarification.
Okay.
I got some more today to add. So, in fact, I will start with the clarification. In fact, I just have to come down here and hit F11, and then friend of RBN and friend of our show, Afeni, had this tweet asking when will it end, right? And I'll just play that for everyone.
Oh. It's like the same story and a different name. Leona Hale has been identified as the 26-year-old pregnant black woman who was shot by 2 Kansas City police officers Friday night. She exited a vehicle with her hands in the air and they still shot her 5 times. I'ma leave y'all with this. Now this is the headline: cops shot an unarmed pregnant woman 5 times amid a suspected carjacking. But people always find their way into my comments, well, there has to be more to the story. There is. In fact, another suspect got out of the car and ran, and 3 officers chased him. She removed herself from the car with her hands up. She even told officers that there was a gun in the car. And multiple times she told them that she could not get down on the ground because she was pregnant. Officers do not reason. They still expect you to comply. And Leona Hale was not even able to take 3 steps before they shot her 5 times.
Like, so that's a bit of clarification. I think that when we go into the story, we'll want to see, where's my other, hold on, let me close this. And yeah, this one. So, Rebecca Kavanaugh, Missouri police claim it is just a rumor that Leona Hale, the woman they shot 5 times on Friday in Kansas City, is pregnant. A rumor that they cannot confirm due to HIPAA violation, despite her being visibly pregnant in photos from the scene. So they say she is hospitalized not because she is pregnant, but on unrelated medical issues. And like I said, I think someone said that she was pregnant during that altercation.
Yeah.
Right?
I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of removed the fact she was pregnant just so it would make it less heinous.
Yes.
But that was kind of the clarification because I was hearing some supports that initially when we were prepping that she was, and we were kind of like, is she or wasn't she? And then I wasn't necessarily seeing anything that she was, pregnant. So I think they probably downplayed the fact that she was pregnant specifically so that it wouldn't seem as terrible that the police would shoot her.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the story from who was it from originally? Kansas City Defender, I think. So Kansas City, Missouri, what community members are now describing as a horrific attempted execution. 2 Kansas City police officers shot and critically wounded a black woman on Friday night, May 27th, in the Independence Plaza neighborhood. The victim and 26-year-old black woman identified as Leona Hale, which I'm going to claim is pregnant, from all accounts I've seen so far. The Kansas City Police Department alleges the incident was in an attempt to arrest a woman and a man in connection with the suspected stolen vehicle, but eyewitnesses say this narrative does not add up given the woman had her hands up and she was also shot an astounding 5 times. Help me out with this name, Collin.
Probably Shaydana. That's
Shaydana. Okay. Either that or Shaydanja, one of the two.
Maybe.
An eyewitness who recorded the aftermath of the scene told the Kansas City Star she heard officers start yelling, "Get out of the car," to 2 people who were in a car close to her. A man got out of the vehicle, she says, and jumped a fence and took off. 3 of the cops took off after him, she said. The woman, on the other hand, exited the car with her hands up. According to the Kansas City Star's eyewitness account, the cops told the woman to get on the ground, but the woman informed them that she was pregnant and so she couldn't get down on the ground. Then police asked her to get down multiple times, which she still couldn't. The woman then informed police that there was a gun in the vehicle. The woman began moving back towards a fence of the parking lot. Numerous officers approached and drew their weapons. She did not pull out a weapon on them. One more time.
Shaydanja.
Shaydanja, we'll go with that. Shaydanja said she did not even have a stick in her hand. Then women ran 3 steps away from officers. Shaydanja said, and police shot 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I remember it because it didn't stop. They shot 5 times. Shaydanja, an eyewitness who recorded the aftermath of the scene, said, I remember seeing her hit the ground and I froze. She says she also asked police numerous times why they shot the woman, but officers refused to answer. Shaydanja's account, along with other eyewitnesses, directly contradict the quote-unquote official police account provided by Sergeant Bell. Many community members are already placing the event in contrast to the Buffalo massacre, asking how the police can safely apprehend a white man who committed mass murder but brazenly shoot a black woman 5 times who posed no threat and had her hands up. A video of the horrific aftermath show Leona lying on the ground after being shot and the police proceeding to handcuff her, dramatically increasing her likelihood of bleeding to death. Fortunately, Leona is still alive and now in stable condition. So, interim Kansas City Police Chief Joseph Chief Maben said, we never want to be in these types of situations. Not the public, as a police department. Anytime it happens is a blight on our community. I want to ensure the public the scene is secure. There's no ongoing threat. Yeah, thanks, asshole. We're committed to be 100% transparent. This is a holiday weekend. It's time for beers and burgers for us and the boys. But not for Leona. Missouri State Highway Patrol has been tasked with investigating the unarmed shooting of Leona Hale. It is procedure for such an outside agency to investigate police-involved shootings, specifically involving the KCPD, as an alleged attempt at providing impartiality. Except they probably do that often. Community members are already decrying this decision as they recalled the botched and corrupt investigation conducted by the agency last year in the case of Malcolm Johnson. Malcolm Johnson was an unarmed black man murdered on March 25th, 21 by KCPD. Similar to Leona's case, all local media outlets, as well as the Missouri State Highway Patrol, reported that he had been armed and engaged in a shootout with the police. But what really happened? As formerly reported by the Kansas City Defender, video later leaked by 2 convenience store employees showed several cops restraining Johnson in a way that would have made it physically impossible for him to fight back. One cop draws her weapon, accidentally shoots another cop in the leg, and then fires several shots into Johnson's back. In other words, not only was Johnson unarmed, but one of the cops accidentally shot the other cop before murdering Johnson, and Johnson was framed for the entire situation. None of this information would have been released if the video footage was not leaked by the convenience store employees. The Missouri Highway Patrol also reported that Johnson had shot a cop and thus found his murder justifiable. As Defender columnist Cassandra Gillig previously wrote, it is easy to see how police are the dominant authority in these murders. Another news story released by KSHB Kansas City 2 days after Malcolm Johnson's murder works to legitimate the narrative by exclusively using police and FBI perspectives. In this story, Public Information Officer Sergeant Jacob Bacina says, we trained tirelessly from day one to give officers every tool, both physically, mentally, and tactically, to work through those situations so that they had the best chance to make the best decisions that they can, suggesting again that this outcome was the best possible and truly could not have gone any other way. Thoughts, Collin?
2 things. One, thank God she's alive. Number 1. Number 2, and I was thinking about that. Yeah, Savvy said this, and that actually there was 3 points I wanted to make. I hope she sues.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope she sues those motherfuckers for what they did. Number 3, and I mentioned this to you, Reef, yesterday because I just found about it on Twitter yesterday. David Hodge, who's known for the Parkland shooting, I think, is basically using Uvalde mass shooting to engage people for March for Our Lives Part 2, which actually is going to be in DC, I believe, next weekend. And, you know, no disrespect to the families in Uvalde, you know, for what happened, you know, last week. This story is not going to get mentioned, though. You know,
Yeah.
I'm sure like this story, you know, like is going to be brushed under the rug, you know, in light of, you know, the Uvalde police shooting. But here, this is what I expect. If they use this march, because David Hodge, he sent a tweet yesterday, like, oh, we're going to have people register to vote. If they're going to use this event to enforce people to vote Democrats,
Yeah.
like, I'm going to fucking scream. You know,
Right.
that happened at George Floyd. I saw it. Like a lot of Black activists, you know, pushing the idea that we needed to vote for Biden. And I'm pretty sure the same shit is going to happen again. You know, like, oh, we need to vote Democrat, you know, to ensure like the Republicans don't get into office, only for the Democrats to promote more of this shit down the road, you know? So,
Yeah.
but I mean, same shit, different day, you know, especially among the Black community, you know? So it's like, again, I'm glad that she's alive, you know, in this case.
Yeah.
But
well, we wouldn't know
you
the
know,
difference. Again, we wouldn't know the difference unless someone filmed it. So please keep
Right.
filming these cops. It's just you have
Right.
to. You have to do
And
that.
yeah, and as I said, it's like this story is not going to get reported. Like, shout out to Savvy for reporting on this, and maybe other smaller networks, you know, for reporting on this.
Yeah.
You know, and again, we don't want to take, obviously with Uvalde, that's a big issue, but this should be just as big of an issue, you know, especially within the Black community, because this happens every day. And we're lucky that we even get to report on this. God knows how many more are not reported every single day.
Right.
So, you know.
Yeah. Robert, anything to add?
Yeah, to Colin's point, you're exactly right. Let's not forget that the police have been highly militarized by Joe Biden, who wrote the crime bill and who is now increasing our police budget way over what Donald Trump had it. I believe the police budget is going to be like close to 200 billion, and it was just over 150 billion when Trump was in office. So voting Democrat to get rid of, you know, bad policing. No, the Democrats are supercharging the police and giving them highly like militarized weaponry. And I don't know if you've seen, there's like a skid steer riot gear they're getting now. It has a wall on it that can extend for all of those pesky activists who keep protesting on the streets in case they want to just scoop them off the street like a, you know, like a snowplow. It's ridiculous. And the other point is, if you still think the police exist in this country to protect you, I don't know what else to show you other than what's happened over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
When a mass shooter goes into a school, these same people who are so brave pumping 5 rounds into a pregnant lady piss their pants and won't do a thing to save your children. But when it comes down to a pregnant lady with her hands in the air, they will unload on her like it's a South Park episode. That means if 2 officers shot 5 times, it means one of them shot 3 times, the other one shot 2, more than likely, or 4 and 1. It means that at least one of them was firing multiple times and they hit her a whole bunch of times. That's not a threat. And you saw what the police chief said, right? He goes, don't worry, the ongoing threat has been taken care of.
Right.
What, did you take those officers' guns away? Because it was a carjacking. It was carjacking. There wasn't a threat till they got there. So the issue here, and I think the big picture that everybody should be taking down right now, is understand that the police exist in this country and are being heavily militarized by the Democrats right now, and they would be also by the Republicans, but both parties do this because both parties are the elites, and the police operate as the lapdog security of the rich people in this country. So they're not there to protect you. They're not there to prevent violence. They're there to inflict violence on the poor people of this country and keep them in line.
Right.
So you won't ever see them preventing school shootings. You won't even see them stepping in and stopping school shootings. Same thing with any, psycho that goes into a grocery store. They're going to stay on the outskirts until they have a way in, or they won't
Right.
go in at all. But when it comes to unarmed people, they pulled over for some reason or another, they'll shoot them 5, 6, 7, or 8 times like a cartoon.
Right.
So it's ridiculous. There is no such thing as police that want the best for you unless you happen to be of the hyper elite class.
Right. I have to wonder if a similar situation like Sandy Hook in an affluent area, like white, predominantly white.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like if given that, if that was a situation to happen again, what the response be? Because no one's necessarily talking about this at Uvalde. All those children were Latino. So it's like, so we have to bring the race into this as well. Like I'm sure, and pretty much if this were in a predominantly Black neighborhood, I'm sure it'll be a similar result of what we did. But I'm sure if it were like, and not to say it doesn't happen, but if this were a predominantly white affluent neighborhood, I'm sure the response with the cops would have been 10 times better, especially given what happened in Sandy Hook, would be a lot better now. I can't say that for sure, but but again, I think the difference with Sandy Hook, they were talking about it for months after that, given, the position of those families. Uvalde, I'll give it another few weeks, before we move on to the next thing. I think they're already starting to kind of move on, from this in a sense, but like I said, like, obviously there are going to be protests over this. As I said, there's going to be a March for Our Lives rally in DC next weekend. And I'm going to be watching Hodge closely because it's just kind of like, yeah, as I said, I hope, well, he's probably going to, but he's going to peddle this, for people to vote Democrat come midterms. And that is not going to help us, to achieve, like the gun safety that we desperately need in this country. Democrats are complicit in the bullshit that the Republicans have perpetuated. So both parties are responsible, given what's been happening within the last few weeks. But I think especially with Leona Hill, what happened to her was just pathetic,
Well, between that and everyone else hurting economically, their jobs being lost, their houses being taken, right? It's brutal right now. Like everyone's hurting. I've seen everyone, literally almost everyone in the space, like having some form of like mental breakdown because of their empathy towards other people right now. It is hurting, and it sucks. So
I suspect that this is not going to be dropped. The school shooting will not be dropped by the Democrats because it is a very valuable wedge issue that they'll use to run on and make sure that you understand that the Republicans are the bad people. I think they'll keep going on this as much as they possibly can. After the midterms, they won't care. But here's the thing. For all the Democrats doing that right now, you guys have Congress and the executive branch. If you guys wanted to do what you say you want to do, you can do it right now. You don't need to win the midterms. You have everything. You've already had everything. If you really cared about this stuff, you would have been doing stuff that you say on Twitter right now over the last 2 years. And what you're going to get is you're probably going to get a wipeout loss in the midterms, and then they'll have the convenient scapegoat that is the Republicans. And then every single time it happens over the next 2 years of Biden's presidency, where there's a split, where, maybe they lose the House, but they keep the Senate, they're gridlocked, and then they'll just blame Republicans for every mass shooting, and it'll be very, very convenient, even though they didn't do shit to actually prevent this. Which, by the way, and I won't get too far into it, if they wanted to really root out the cause of all of these shootings, mass shootings, you fight poverty. Right? You fight. You don't fight crime by funding the police more. You fight crime by reducing poverty. And when you fight poverty, you create a system that is fertile soil for people to be comfortable, and they don't have the anxieties and the suicidal ideation and the situation that's so abusive and traumatic that it causes them to go and become these mass shooters. So that's the root. and the
Right.
Democrats are as implicatable as the Republicans are in, creating abject poverty in this country.
Right.
So they don't have any interest of actually stopping
that-
any of this
Right.
stuff. It's all
That poverty-
Well,
That poverty is there just to depress you. It's just there to depress you. You could easily fix it. You just have to
Right.
like look at me. You gotta get angry right now. You got to.
Right.
Now
Right.
is not the time for sitting on your ass. Like, get the
No
fuck
one-
out there. Politicians aren't going to save you. They're not. Like, voting isn't going to help right now. You're going to have to make the people in power do what you need them to do with that power or take it from them. End of story. Like, oh,
Right.
Yep.
like, not to go off for a bit, but like, I'm not hearing too many people talk about Ramos and like what would possess an 18-year-old to buy a gun and shoot children, like, and don't give me the bullshit like, oh, he had like, like it's a matter of video games, it's media and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it could be part of it, but given what I've heard from the mom, a little bit, it sounds like, the kid was depressed. Why was he depressed?
right.
You know,
Economic
it could-
reasons, but not being
Economic
checked up
reasons or
on
whatever
mental health
else,
wise. Right.
like, and people are not necessarily having that nuanced conversation in terms of like, what would possess people to do shit like this? It's not always just about the media and like video games that people or whatever play that will kind of subject us to want to do that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And I think Savvy had, she showed a clip, with Professor Wolf that basically said that guns, people buying guns, it's tied to economics. Like when you don't necessarily feel safe, then you're going to be more tempted to buy a gun, so, especially like if there's things going on in your life that you don't necessarily feel like, like it's in your control. So a gun essentially is a way to be in control,
Yep.
Case in point, the cops,
Right.
like, so, so it's like, no one is having that conversation and how that's tied to mental health and how that's ultimately tied to healthcare, which
Yeah.
we don't fucking have in this country.
How we have
So
none of that. So
And we've sort of come
Um,
full circle in that it's only going to encourage more people to buy guns when the police
Right.
are so ultra violent and when the police prove that they're also not there to protect your kids at school. That encourages people. I'm sure the gun shops and like all of these companies that sell guns, I'm sure their stocks are off the charts right now
mhm,
because it's in times like these where there's an ultra authoritative police force that's hurting Black people and everybody,
Mhm.
but particularly Black and brown people, scaring them into buying guns to protect themselves from the cops. And then there's a whole bunch of Latino people who are worried that their kids are going to be allowed to be shot up at a school. So they're going to arm themselves just in case it ever happens again, so they can go and do this and protect something that the police aren't protecting. So everything that the Democrats are doing right now, which is just nothing, is only exacerbating the problem. And what they're going to do is they're going to throw more money at the police force, which is just going to make the problem worse. Maybe they'll try to do an assault rifle ban, which will just create a black market, and there'll be just a ton of underground guns. It's just, they're not going to do anything. Mental health is something that none of these people will actually, they'll never legislate like Medicare for all for mental health, which would be the
Right.
easiest thing in the world. If you do something like that, that might actually have a chance at doing some good, but
Yeah.
you won't actually see them legislate it, even though they have all of Congress.
right. Yeah, we're not having those conversations, but instead it's like the idea of like, oh, the school needs to be more secure. You need to tear down the school. We need to get these security things in school. And it's like, I was sharing with a friend, Mona, like, like I grew up in the UK in the 80s.
Yeah.
That the idea of having like a metal detector at a school, like
Unheard of.
even back then, was foreign,
Right.
to me. Like,
Like,
even
I grew up
here.
in the South, like where people had shotguns in their truck parked at the school. Like I grew up with that. Like that sounds like what my parents grew up with. But no, I had to like, and it's like if
So,
you
yeah.
got into a fight, you just got into a fight. Like that was it.
Right.
No one
So, yeah,
went to
I
go
think
grab
that-
anything.
Yeah, but I think, the idea of safety, talk about it. But like,
Yeah.
you're essentially wanting to turn schools into prisons, you know? So it's like, that is not okay, you
Yeah.
know? So it's like, but I think, again, we need to have a more nuanced conversation, and we can't trust our government to necessarily, you know, have those conversations. So I think it's definitely dependent on us in the independent media space to kind of force those conversations. A lot of this is tied to mental health, you know, class, and poverty, but it's all interrelated.
Yeah.
And we can do all that at once. We can walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. All of those options. It's not like we have to pick our one like thing. We need mental health care. Free mental health care would help. Eliminating poverty would be a huge thing. But you do all of these things at once with some, you know, common sense gun control. We have to have a multifaceted approach because this is a multidimensional problem. It's not just about, well, we need to take all the guns away. It's also not all about, you know, we need to do all mental health. No, we can do a lot of things. We needed to just decide how to triage and decide where to put our resources and have a conversation about what could actually help rather than virtue signaling.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But yeah, these stories just anger me at this point. So, you know, mainly because of the lack of action in any department.